Welcome to this incredible episode with Becky Keen. I had Becky on a previous summit, and I just was it was so refreshing to meet someone who was crushing it in business. At the time, she was making around 50,000 cash received months. That might be more now. And yet she was also so like grounded, so authentic, so unfiltered. And so I obviously had to have her back on my actual podcast. And I'm really excited for you guys to get to know her. And I just know it's going to be so much gold. I'm genuinely really excited to listen to what she has to say. And I know that everyone listening is going to get so much value out of this. So, first of all, I'm actually really keen, Becky, for you to share a little bit about how you got into your business in the first place. I'm just really curious for you to share a little bit about that.
Oh my gosh. So it's funny because I was on someone else's podcast and they asked me this question and I was like, do you want me to start like the 5 years ago story or the 40 years ago story? Like,
Yeah. I,
because
I want the
there's,
40 years ago story.
oh my God, there's just like so many
I know.
iterations, and when you've been in business, you can look back and see all the different stages that led you to get to this place.
Yeah.
Um, so I was in the oil and gas industry. Well, to back up even before that. So when I came out of high school, I just didn't want to do the same old thing that everyone else was doing. All my friends were going to university and they were getting student loans. And I was just like, I don't think this is for me. And through like a serendipitous universe intervention series of events, I ended up on a sailing ship that was going around the world for a 18-month like round the world voyage, like circumnavigation with about 30 other people. And that trip was like life changing, obviously, and we could talk about that for the whole hour.
Wait,
But when I
did you have kids at that time? I'm just really curious.
no, so
No. Okay.
I would have been first year university. I was 18 years old. So I was 18 years old, sail around the world, we come back. And at, at that time, I had, well, almost 2 years of sea time, which was the exact amount that you needed to sit for your third mate's license as like a mariner, a sailor. So I started working my way up through navigation school and I started working on cargo ships and like ships going to West Africa, ships going through the Panama Canal, like all around the world on these big cargo ships, supply vessels, scientific research vessels, and that. And I kept thinking when I was on these ships, so now I'm like in my early 20s, working my way up. I now have my first mate's license slash captain's license, and I just kept thinking I'm going to figure out what I want to do with my life. At some point, this journey of being on these ships, it's going to land and I'm going to figure out what I want to do with my life because I didn't, I knew I didn't want to be a sailor forever. And so through all the sailing, I was also offered a job in one of the offices, in one of the ship offices, like as a operations manager, marine superintendent, which then led me down the path of becoming a marine regulatory expert, safety expert. And I started advising like oil and gas companies and shipping companies. And it's so funny because my specialty was the rules. Like if you wanted to know what the rules of the Shipping Act, the Canada Shipping Act versus the CNSOPB, like people would come to me. They're like, that's the girl you want to talk to. She knows all the rules and she can help us navigate this, like the frameworks of the marine world. And yeah, it's just so funny because like I'm so not a rule follower. Like it was just this, I had to live that part of my whole life to then see what I wanted on the opposite side of things. And at at some point, now we're like, I've gotten married, we have kids, I'm working in an office, and it just all started to bubble up and boil over. And I felt like I had lost what I originally had gone in to that line, that what my business was then, working with ships and shipping companies. And I started to not believe my own message anymore. And my daughter was born, and like all these just signs were pointing that I was on the wrong track. And so this is where coaching comes in. I was chatting with he was my a business mentor at the time. So on top of all that, I had started my own consulting company. We were building an app. We were trying to really change the way the industry, the safety industry, did safety so that you could have it portable in your hand instead of all this paper. So I was building an app with these two other co-founders. I have my other business. I'm working for like Shell and Canon and all these big oil companies. And my second child had been born, my son, and I'm like, oh my god, this is like not like this is not the thing. I don't want to leave these kids. I don't want to. We had a nanny, we had a housekeeper, and I was like, I actually wanted to be a stay-at-home mother. My mom was a writer, she was a geologist, but in my mind, she stayed at home with us because she was there every single day we got home from school, and like I'll say we never saw her working, but what I mean by that is like I never saw her go off to the office or have to ignore us. So my mom was just this presence in my life, and that's what I wanted for my own kids. And I was seeing that that's not what I had created. And so I started working with a coach, a spiritual life coach. And at first, I was so resistant. I was like, I don't know how this person is going to help me, but I felt like I needed to get back on track with my life. And through the work that I did with her, it was like I just rediscovered all the aliveness that I had shut down, that I had ignored, that I had stopped listening to. And somewhere along that way, from being this incredibly free spirited, like world global traveler, sailor, do whatever the F she wants, to now working this like corporate businessy the shipping industry. I'm like, I got lost. I lost myself here. And so there was this huge reclaiming process of like, who is Becky and what does she want? And reconnecting to like what I would call my wild. And through working with that coach, my life shifted so dramatically in such a short period of time. And I quit my job. I stopped consulting. I started coaching because it had had such a big impact on me. And my OG coaching was more spiritual coaching, like connect with your soul, connect with self, find essence, connect with source, with the universe. I was having these such big epiphanies about limiting beliefs and mindset. And I was like, oh my God, did you know that 95% of your thoughts are programmed and given to you by someone else? And I was reading all the books and all the spiritual texts, and I felt myself coming back alive and started coaching. And so that was the first, that was 9 years ago, the first sort of iteration of my business. And it has since morphed many times over. And the one of the things that I discovered pretty early on was anybody coming to work with me, they all had these dreams of starting a business. They all had this idea for making money doing something they loved. And I was like, well, I'm really good at business. Like, to me, business is the easiest thing ever. Like, what's the even question? What are you stuck on? Like, let's go, let's start your business. Because I'd started a consulting business, I started a safety app business. Like, when I was 12 years old, I started a babysitting company. I'd been a TV show host. Like, I never let any of that stop me. And so it morphed into business coaching. And now I do business mentorship and business coaching, but there's 100% this lens, or like the portal has to be through. It's something you must love. And if you start to veer off track, or if it's not 100% like connected to you and your soul, like I redirect people and get them back on that path so that making money is something they really enjoy. And it's really a byproduct of the work they do, as opposed to the energy of, I have to make money. What am I going to do to make money? I reverse engineer that. And we're like, okay, well, what's pouring out of you? What is your soul here to do and to lead and to say? And then through that, yes, let's also make incredible money.
Oh my God, like I mean, I'm sure other people are feeling this as well as they're either listening or watching this, but like hearing you is so grounding. And maybe because for me also, like there always is that like spiritual like lens that's always like connected for me personally. Um, but also like I'm like there I like that there's also that very like strong sort of like business and kind of like just get to it as well. So it's like that beautiful combination of the two. Um, but also, well, I just found it so interesting that you were like after like the sailing, which by the way is just such a cool like journey, and like being on the ship, and then like going into more like all the rules and the structures and the systems and like having a business on that like side of things. And then for you to find your aliveness when you got coaching. And I think it's so interesting that then you also said like I then started coaching because you had such a dramatic breakthrough and such a massive like wow realization. Um so I'm really curious. I mean, there's like a million things I want to dive into based on what you said, but this is where I'm being led to is like so now obviously you've been business in coaching for a while and you're doing really well. So okay, I'll use the term because I know people care about things like this. Like you're making around the $50,000 months. It could be below or above, like who cares? But like that just gives like a frame. Do you ever find yourself losing connection with that initial original aliveness where you had those like massive like breakthroughs, huge evolution when you were getting like that spiritual coaching, like you were being coached yourself? Like, do you find that sometimes like you lose track of that? And then how do you find ways to kind of reconnect with that aliveness? I'm really curious.
Yeah. And I know exactly what you're talking about. And the first sort of vision that came to mind in terms of how I reconnect, um, I was thinking about my cabin. So we have this family, my parents built this, it's not a log home. It's like a cabin in the woods. So they bought 30 acres in like old growth forest, Nova Scotia. We drive in, we park the car, then we hike in to get there. So it's only accessible by foot, or there's no road. They never built a road. I as a teenager, I begged them to build a road. I'm like, can we please drive to the cabin and get power and all this? And they're like, no. And so they built this place when I think I was 3 years old, and we still have it. In fact, I was texting with my mom, who's there now, and you can barely get even a cell signal down there. Um, and she's in her mid 70s, and she goes down there by herself and has a chainsaw and chops wood and carry the water up from the lake. Like it's old school. And that place, having that place in my life, I can get I don't want to say I can get disconnected because I never really feel fully disconnected, but sometimes I can get really caught up. I can get caught up in the like, oh my God, I got to launch this offer and write all these emails and do Instagram and coach my clients and all you just sort of get swept into that energy, right? Or you're busy with your kids and all the things. And so I can get like pulled away from that source energy, or it can feel like I'm getting pulled away from that source energy. And I literally just need to get in the car, drive 2 hours, go to my cabin. It's all trees, huge forest. My dad is also buried there. And there's just this spirit there. And when I go there, everything just is back. I'm like, oh yeah, I am the God force. The God force is within me. And so that's like one of the bigger things that I do. But then on a daily basis, for me, it's really about even just these small little things, right? Before I whip the covers off my bed and I'm lying in that cozy bed and I wake up in the morning just thinking about what I'm grateful for, whether that's sometimes it's hard. I'm like, I'm grateful that there's coffee downstairs. Like that's all I'm really feeling grateful for in the moment. Or I might be grateful like that my kids are healthy, or that I had a good sleep, or that I have such amazing clients. Like I'll just think about what I'm really and truly grateful for. And one of the things that first spiritual coach taught me was really about accessing source and the universe through your breath. And that is a practice that, like, here sitting at my desk, there can be a storm swirling, kids sick, parents in laws in hospitals and surgeries happening. And I can just come into my body and like take a breath and feel like my essence within. And that is something that when I met Anne, my first spiritual coach, that was her thing. Like she was like, "Oh, you've been living above the neck your whole life." She's like, "When's the last time you really breathed into your body?" And now I can do it with like no resistance. And that's the quickest thing. Like when you have to breathe anyway, right? Like you might as well make it worthwhile. So that's kind of how I think. And And then there's like, but from your breath, there's other things like I just go for a walk on the beach. I get my feet out in the grass. I know for me that if I can go outside for 5 minutes before diving into making kids' lunches and thinking about what content I'm going to create that day, 5 minutes outside, sun on my face or fresh air, that's going to bring me back. And yeah, people just, it's like we forget our true essence and what we need. And the other thing I'll say about that is I think as a woman in particular, we've been very conditioned to be that one who is needed and who is always doing all the things. And my husband and I are very different energies. He is super grounded. He's like that earth energy. And I'm fire. I'm a Leo. I'm just like, whoa, let's go. Like, let's live this life. And I'm always wanting to go make plans and do this and do that. And he's like, I just want to go fishing, in the lake behind the house. I'm not, he'll go on adventures. But I have always been so good. And that's a co-creation between him and I at saying, like, I need this. So for example, before you clicked record, I was sharing we went to Kelowna as a family. We did a, family trip out west to go snowboarding in the mountains. My daughter wants to go to university there. And Kelowna is halfway from Nova Scotia to Hawaii. And my best friend lives in Hawaii. And I knew that I would not be able to go to Kelowna and then fly back home to Nova Scotia. Like, I'm halfway there. I need to go to Hawaii. And I think a lot of women would be like, oh, I can't do that. That's so selfish. I can't go to Hawaii after going to Kelowna. I can't just go by myself. Can I? Yeah, you can. And so I've always been the person who will ask for what I need. And what I need is time by myself, time to just be like a free spirit in the world, time to visit my own friends, to not be mothering, to not be working, to not be coaching, to not be a wife. Even though I never lose those things when I go do that, it's like, I just need that time. And so I will ask for what I need. And that, like, I think that's a gift. And I think it's also an edge for a lot of people. And they're like, oh my God, what would people think? And I'm like, let the people think what they think. I'm going to keep living my life.
I like, oh my, I don't know. I can't help but I'm always thinking about how other people are experiencing like any of my content, including my podcast. But like you, even just sitting here with you, and I'm sure people who are sat at home, I just feel so like I'm coming back to like Earth. I guess I'm Taurus, so like for me it is about like grounding, and then I'm also got like a real fiery energy as well. So I really resonate with that. But even just you speaking, I'm sure people are thinking like, oh my God, like this is just because it's who you are. It's like your embodiment. It's like your energy. So I'm really curious. I mean, there's so many things because it's one, it was really interesting that you said like I never really feel truly disconnected from what I like to call like magic zone, God zone, source zone, like whatever you want to use it. And and it was really interesting because it made me think like, gosh, like that in itself is so fascinating because I would say that that's not very common, where people do feel like it's, you said like, yeah, sure, sometimes you get kind of caught up, but you are always connected. And I think that language is fascinating in and of itself. But then also it got me really curious. This is what I want to ask you. This is what's coming up because I'm thinking about my audience. When you have, and maybe you haven't had this kind of a client before, maybe you do right now, where they're like, let's use a number, they're making 10K, 15K months in their business. And they're kind of just they're doing all the things. They feel like they're doing all the things. They're doing the marketing, they're doing the selling. They've learned from a lot of people. They're people who are go-getters who execute. Like I'd say every single person on my email list and everyone who follows me is like, people who just they take action. That's never been their thing, like where they struggle to do that piece. They're very disciplined. And they've also got that fire. But let's say you've got a client who comes to you and maybe you have this, she's making 10K, 15K months, but like she is stuck there or she feels stuck there because it's been months, maybe even years, where like that's just the number that keeps hitting. I'm curious for you, like, what are a couple of whether it's like the pillars or a couple of places that you start digging into to see what's gonna be the kind of that's gonna like break the dam or that's gonna like break through that ceiling that like whether it's like a true ceiling or a fake ceiling? Like, where would you start digging with that kind of a business owner?
Yeah, I love this question. I'm like, oh my God, what this would be so fun to demo this like sometime on a podcast. Like for myself, even I'm thinking I'll invite someone in, I can coach them around
Oh
this.
my
Like,
God, we should totally do that. I'll organize that. Okay, keep
yeah,
going.
yeah. So, okay, the first I think I'd go a couple different places, but I would want to have a conversation with them about their existing money beliefs. So I would want to investigate. So let's say they're making 10 to 15K months. What do they fear would happen at the 20K, the 40K, 50K, 100K level? What do they fear would happen at that level of income? And then they're going to say something like, oh, well, I'm already working really hard, so I'd have to work 2 or 3 times as hard. And that doesn't really feel possible. I don't know how I could possibly work harder because I'm working hard enough to get to the 10 to 15K months. Or a lot of my clients would then talk about they might feel greedy for wanting 50 to 100K months. Or they would also talk about like there's a lot of hidden beliefs around people who have money. So my clients would say things like, well, I'm really afraid that if I start making 50K months or 100K months or whatever that number is, that goal number is, then other people will think I'm rich. And there's a belief that being rich means you're greedy, means you're bad, means you're like not a good person. And you're all of a sudden going to get disconnected from your integrity. So I would poke around on what are their money beliefs? What's some of the conditioning that they've received around money? And that would be kind of an initial place that I would go. The other thing that comes up for me in that conversation is like, are they actually doing work that they love? Or is it work that is like, yeah, and I think of so many of my own clients, they're like, I like this, I'm good at this. But when we poke around, they actually have an idea for something way bigger. They're like, well, no, if I really had my way, I would do this. And they're like, I would host international Lux retreats, or I would have a mastermind. And then, but what comes up for them is nobody would sign up for those retreats. Who would fly halfway across the world? No one's going to pay 15K to come into my mastermind. I don't have 15 clients to come into a 15K mastermind. So we're going to find that there's actually an explosion of what they want to do with their business. And there's a way bigger offer and a way bigger plan for their path, but they're just playing small and they're playing safe because their ego mind is afraid, but their soul, like essence. And I actually had this conversation with a client the other day. She's like, my soul feels like it's this big, but I'm playing here and I keep getting these corporate clients and I don't like it. And that's not what I want to do. I'm like, okay, if we can unpack that and get you reconnected to what essence is saying and what soul is saying, like that's unlimited. So the ego, the mind is capped, it's limited. It's filled with thoughts that aren't even yours. They were given to you by other people. They're all the things you hear. And source, energy, universe is unlimited. And I think of my father who used to talk about infinity. Infinity, it just goes on and on and on. The universe goes on and on and on. There is no cap, there is no end. And you are that. Like I am source, source is me. It's within us. Access point being your breath. And so when you get connected with that, you're literally unstoppable. Like there's no cap, there's no limit. And so I would get that person like reconnected to what they truly desire, because then there's going to be that energy that allows them to go. And then obviously we're going to talk strategy. But to me, the strategy is like, yeah, no, I can give you the strategy all day long. But if you are not in your beautiful flow state and you haven't unraveled the fears that are holding you back, then it's sort of like putting a band-aid on a gushing wound. Like it's not the thing.
I could listen to you all day. Yeah, I think it's so powerful. I've always found it really interesting how people like dig, like especially coaches and stuff like that. Like it is really um my fascination, like the coaching, just coaching in general. And I do think it's really interesting that you initially were like, what are those like money beliefs? Because if the person is like what feels like plateauing or stagnant at a certain level, then often it does suggest like there's something going on subconsciously, which on a conscious level they might not be aware of. So I love that you like first like ask about that. And then it's really interesting that you said like sometimes, and I think this could not be more true, where people are it's like they're playing small, and so that's why there's no fire. And it's like you're like when they actually go for the real big ass like vision and dream and calling and mission and purpose and like the real thing, it's like that's when they're like their soul is on fire, and it's almost like they can't not. It's and I've had, it's so interesting with my business, like there have been so many kind of like the waves of an ocean. It's like ebbs and flows where suddenly I'm like, oh my God, I can't not do this. Like I want to do it like all day, every, it's like that kind of like ongoing thing. And I think it's when I'm so connected with the true soul, like essence, the true soul calling, the true soul purpose. So it's really interesting that you said that. I'm really curious now because I'm curious. Yeah. So what do you then find, like let's say on coaching session like three, so the you guys have like done covered like some money beliefs, you've dug into like what's the real dream, the real vision, looked at potentially like yeah what's that like infinity essence, and then potentially what strategy, and they've got all of that, and then they come back to you on like third coaching call and they're like, what do you find tends to be, what's the right word, like the bottleneck, the like the stagnation that then comes in like a few sessions in when they've been integrating it and like moving and executing and taking action, like what do you find then suddenly stops them again when they come to you?
It's usually fear of what other people think and or fear of rejection. So when you're finally doing that bigger thing and you're starting to put yourself out there in a bigger, bolder way, something happens, something will shift. A client will say to you, I mean, this happened to me. Like, so I get bolder and more unfiltered on social media, and I do this reel that was kind of poking fun a little bit at the different types of clients that I've worked with, but I thought it was in a loving way. And a couple of people messaged me and they're like, "Hey, that hurt my feelings." Like my own clients said that hurt my feelings. That can stop you in your tracks. And that can be the thing, like that can be the thing that will derail you. Or I had a friend who I started, I went from like 20, 30K months to then I was skyrocketing to like 80, 90, 100K months. And this friend was like, "Girl, you are way too big for your britches. Like you're being too much right now. Like what are you doing?" And so it's there, something comes up for someone, or their mom is like, "What? I don't understand. You're making money on the internet. Like, what are you doing? I had another client whose mother said, "Have you joined a cult?" Like there's all the stuff that other people think and believe. And when you're being bolder and you're being braver and you're starting to like sell from your soul and make more money, or at least be more visible than you were before, there will be something. And it's oftentimes it's the very fear that held you back. And now you have to be with that fear. And, I'll give an example without sharing too many details, but I've always had this fear of being seen as bad, as a bad person. And that dates back to being a little girl and being put in my room when I'm bad. And like, I hated being put in my room when I'm bad. And so I carry this fear of like, other people might think I'm bad. And I don't want people to think I'm bad. And I was coaching and working with someone else in one of her containers. And really my business was blowing up and I was becoming like bigger and more clients. And there was a dynamic between her and I started to think, she thinks I'm bad. She thinks I'm doing something wrong here. And so that's the type of thing. It's like the same belief, but on a different level or on a different layer. Like that same belief, or if the thing with that client example where we poked around their money beliefs, they're probably going to meet that money belief again, just on a different level. They'll go to 20, 30, 40K. And then there's going to be that belief again. It's going to surface like, well, wait, is it actually okay for me to make XYZ, whatever that number is? And it's the same belief, but different level, different layer. And that's, to me, that's the stuff that holds all of us back. And even when I think back to the fall, a couple of falls ago, like when my income made this huge jump, it was this, it's so interesting looking back because it was really about like, am I allowed to do that? Like I look around my neighbors and the people around me and like they're just working regular jobs. You know, she's a nurse and he's a this and they're that, right? Like it's not normal to experience the types of income that we're talking about, right? Like that was certainly wasn't normalized for me. And so there's something along those lines that will come up for people. And it might not be in the third session, it might be in like the 10th or the 12th, but that's what will come up in my experience.
It's so interesting because even like it was so interesting when you said that like you wrote a like a carousel or whatever it was, like or maybe it was a reel on Instagram, and then people thought like it was about them or whatever. And
Yeah.
maybe it was about that. Like to be honest, if they felt like it was about them, it probably was about them. Not that you meant to for it to be about them, but maybe there is stuff that they had to do or work on, right? Like realistically, right? And it's so interesting that you so nonchalantly shared that because for me, I was noticing in my body, I was like, I wonder if I would even say what Becky just said because I care so much about my clients like feeling like I'm in integrity to them and never like sharing anything that would make them feel less than. And the irony is though, like people like you and women like me, we actually care. Like the fact that we are even having this conversation in the first place suggests that we obviously care. And then at the same time, both of you, like both you and I know, because you know, you and I've worked with so many mentors and coaches, and one of which is like Steph is like it's really powerful when someone can just say something and it's not coming from like it's all about the intention, right? Like the intention behind it. Like are you trying to put people down or are you just trying to call people forward and like share what you've seen and like what you've perceived and like and that it will help someone step up and like bring out their power and realize, oh, I'm being called out or I'm being brought forward or whatever the word is. And actually like I love it, but sometimes we get triggered. Like I it's so interesting. I'm part of this other mastermind and it's kind of newish to me. And she said something in the in like like one of the containers is a Facebook group. There's other calls and things, but and she said something and I felt like it was about me. And I was like, I'm sure it was about other people as well, but like, and I was like, oh, and I felt like a bit hurt, and I felt a bit like wanting to shut down, and I felt a bit almost like a little bit angry as well, and like I noticed like all these feelings, and then I also noticed like the story of like, cool, it could have nothing to do with me, but even if it was about me, like there's really what she was really doing was like really bringing in boundaries and being really strong and really being powerful and being something that I struggle with in containers and client spaces where like she was actually saying like these are the rules or these are the kind of boundaries that I hold in this space, and that's why she has such a good container is because she has the boundaries, right? But it was an area where I noticed myself being like, oh, that's not an area that I feel very strong in yet. So it's really interesting with like everything that you were sharing, like it's so true that that can be, it's like people don't want to believe that those are the things that like hold them back. And yet, like realistically, like you were saying, the strategy stuff is actually quite like you just do it. Like you show up, you write the email, you show up, you make the reel, you show up, you get on the sales call, like whatever it might be. Whereas like this stuff is actually the stuff that like slows you down. Or like when you do put the post, and I've seen this with your content recently, it's like more and more like just saying it as it is and just like in kind of a little bit more like in your face. I still think it's really like soft in comparison to like what I have seen other people like I like being like that kind of like candid. Like I love the candor because I'm somebody who like that works for me and that brings me out like being like, oh yeah, like she's right, like I need to like step up. But I have seen that and it's so true, like it changes the flavor of your emails and your sales pitches and the way you show up depending on how you're feeling that day, or you know, if you let that stuff like slow you down or keep you down. So I have another kind of question, which is a little bit like off what we're talking about, but I feel like it still resonates for me. Is what about someone who they've done the money beliefs, right? They've done some of the like, okay, now I know what my big path is. I know what my big vision is. You've done some coaching on their strategy, and now they're doing the things. Like they're doing the strategy work, they're showing up, they're doing the things. And then they come back to you and like, let's say they've been working in business for like 5 years, whatever, and they've been doing it for like 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 20 weeks, whatever it might be. And they come back to you and they're like, I'm feeling a little bit like it's not changing. Like the outer world is not changing. The results don't really feel like they're shifting that much. And it's such an like age, like it's a question that every entrepreneur I think has had to like sit with when it's like you are on that kind of like, yeah, you're making whatever it might be, and now you're ready for your next jump, and now you're having to sit in the void or in the in between. I'm curious for you, like, what's your take on that? Like with someone who's in that void where they're like, yep, I've got my 5K months, my 10K months, my 15K months. Now I'm ready for my big jump. I'm doing all the things we spoke about, the money beliefs. I've been doing the work. I've been doing the showing up, the strategy, the execution. But now I'm in this like it's still not here. What's your coaching around that? What's your usually your take around that?
I mean, the conversation usually goes to the this like needing needing something before it's arrived, like needing that evidence, needing that validation. And so for me, because I have many times been in those voids, and it's the thing I go back to again and again is like, what am I here for? What do I stand for? What do I want to create? And this is like the big thing with this is that we have placed these artificial timelines on success, on when I think I'm supposed to hit a 50K month or a 100K month. And yes, we have a certain level of control, right? In the actions we take and the strategy we use and how we show up. And like all of that is within your control. But what we can't necessarily control all the time is how quickly other people move, or how our audience pivots or shifts, or how an algorithm is going to pick up our new content or not, right? And so it matters who you are in those in between times. And because this has come up so many times with my clients, and what I normally coach them on is their attachment to the timeline. It's like you've made up this artificial story in your head that you should hit 50K or 100K by now. And then they give up, or they dip in their power and they dip in their energy. And it's like, what if that was tomorrow? What if tomorrow you were going to hit that number and now you're dipping in your power? And so I would work with them on that. And, I go back to the time, like I literally went from a 30K month to a 90K month. Like 1 month it was 30K, the next month it was 90K, 40 days later it was 100K. And thank God I didn't give up. Like I'd been at those 30K months for probably 2 years. I'd have to go back and look at the exact numbers. I most certainly was not attached to the timeline. I wasn't like, it has to come. When is it going to come? I just knew it was coming. And so my work was to like stay in my lane and stay in my zone and keep doing the thing. And also just notice where I might be playing smaller, holding myself back, and also filtering myself, right? Like you even said, you might not have said like what I said. And that is true for so many people, right? Is they're holding their tongue and they're being vanilla and they're not saying the thing that they actually want to say. And that will hold you back from those bigger jumps. Um, what was your question? Oh yeah, how would I
I'm
coach
so
someone who's in
mesmerized
that
by
like
everything you've just said. Keep going if there's more.
no, just like being in that zone, it's like we've made up a story about the timeline and when it should come, and it's fake, it's artificial, it's not real. So what's more important is that you show up every damn day with that fire, with that passion, with that aliveness, with that go energy, because that's what's going to attract the people, and that's what's going to make that shift.
So I'm curious with regard because I couldn't agree more with you with regards to the timeline. And what do you find like when you've coached people on that timeline piece? And it's so interesting because as somebody who I love this about me, and I feel like a lot of the people that I who follow me as well, they're very similar in that there's that drive, that ambition, that like bigness and at the same time there's also that kind of like they can also be very like laid back and like quite chill about things as well. So they kind of like flip-flop as well, like almost like where they're suddenly they go from like being super attached to like a timeline or a number or whatever to suddenly being like going the pendulum swing on the other side where they're like completely detached. And then there's no, it's almost like the drive has, and I've experienced this myself, where the drive almost like disappears, the fire disappears, the hunger disappears, the ambition almost feels like it's disappeared because it's like we've swung all the way the other way. Like I remember for me, it was like I'd realized there was such an attachment to the numbers. And I was like, okay, like obviously I didn't realize it until then. So as soon as I realized I was okay. And then I was like, oh yeah, it's all about like the now and the present and like the like being obsessed with the season now and loving the magic now and all the things. But then what I noticed as well was I was like, huh, I feel though like that has also taken away some of my like not urgency is maybe not the right word, but like let's go. Like because there I remember prior to that is like I remember there was definitely a little bit of like there are so many women's lives that like need impacting in a beautiful way, like where it's more from a place of heart and mission and purpose. Like what are we waiting for? Like we need to reach more people, we need to touch more women's lives, whether that's through your fitness program, whether it's through your health program, your finance program, like whatever it is. So like how do you, I guess, what's your take on that and what's your coaching around that when it's like there's like the attachment to the timeline to the number, but then sometimes the person goes all the way the other way where it's like, okay, I'm not going to be attached, but now I'm not really like I don't feel any like I'm feeling less and less ambitious and less drive and hunger. And they maybe almost miss that a little bit as well. Like, yeah, what's your take on that?
I mean, in that conversation, I would go to getting them reconnect with their why, like why they started this business in the first place. And I think back to like baby Becky and young Becky who was getting that coaching from her first spiritual coach. And I would just go live every Sunday in my office chair to talk about what I learned that week. I was just like, oh my God, did you guys know? Did you know you don't have to have a 9 to 5 job? Do you know you don't have to believe the thoughts? Like the thoughts that come into your mind aren't even yours. I was just so blown away that Becky never, like, I actually don't really understand when people are like, I can't get clients. I'm like, I never had that issue because I was so connected to my why and the work I wanted to do. And so if someone has unraveled their, attachment to money and timeline, and they're just sort of floating around in the wind and they're feeling a bit lost and not connected, I would get them back to like, hey, what is the thing that you're here to do? The other place that's really fun to play in that energy is coming. So when you've unattached yourself from those money beliefs, and this is what I played with a lot and still do, it's the energy of like, what if today was going to be a 10K day? What if this month was going to be a 50K month or a 100K month? And I play this game with my clients and I call it a game because I'm like, I'm not saying it has to, because the moment I say you have to have a 50K month to myself or a client, they're like, oh, we go into contraction. So whatever when we're attached to something, and I always explain the science to people because then they like get it. When we're attached to something, our body perceives it as a threat. And what happens when we perceive something as a threat? We push it away. It's not safe. And so we train our nervous system that that's not safe. So if we say to our psyche, our nervous system, whatever, wouldn't it be fun? Or what if, like, just a game, lighthearted, nothing serious, just like, let's fuck around and find out. That's sort of the energy I go at it with. Like, let's see what happens today, this week, this month. How big can I go? How big can I play? How much money could I possibly make if I actually went all in? Not because I have to make the money and I need to make the money, but because it might be fun to try and experiment. And that is like, that's the zone. You've nailed it when you can be in that zone. So that's where I would coach someone with that.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that because for some reason it brought me back to I think this was like year one. I think it was year one of my business. I got coached by Rich Litvin, who wrote the book The Prosperous Coach. And I was in one of his masterminds, and I'm sure a bunch of people who will know of him. Um, and in one of his many games and stuff, he really liked things like that. Was like you basically like draw a like a wheel, and then you write down what your goal is. So let's say it's like a 30K month, you triple it and you do like, okay, you want to get 90K. And but you don't want to just get 90K, you want to get 90K worth of no's. So people saying no to you. Now, obviously, there are ways to tweak this if you don't get on sales calls. At the time, like I remember I was on like they were kind of like coaching calls, sales calls, whatever. And so what you're really aiming for, you're not aiming for $90,000 cash received. You're not aiming for $30,000 cash received in the month. You're aiming for, let's see if I can get $90,000 worth of no's. So for example, I jump and I did this and I made the most money I'd ever made as a result of it. Like this is like 9 years ago now. And yeah, like I remember being like, it was so funny because he really cared about the no's, which that's how it worked for me because everyone's different, but for me, authority figures really works for me in terms of like being like, okay, challenge on, like, let's go, whether it's like my mentor, my coach, whatever. And I'd be like, yeah, he really cares about these no's. So like, let's play the game full out, right? And so I'd get on so many of these free coaching calls, free sales calls, like different things that I had going on at the time. And I genuinely didn't care if the person would say yes. All I cared about was like, can I serve this person so powerfully during our like 60-minute coaching call at the time? It was like a free coaching call I was doing. I was brand new in coaching. And then I will bring up the like I'll bring up the program and offer it to them because otherwise I'm not going to get a no. So I need to get a no, or a yes, but ultimately I'm like, all I care about is for them to say no. So I can be like, boom, okay, I've just offered like a 2 grand program. That's going to add up to my wheel. And you'd like color in the 2 grand on your wheel and you had to get up to 90K for that month in no's. And it's exactly what you're describing is like, for me, it was like, all the pressure like went away because it was not about what like because deep down I didn't want the no's, but now it wasn't even about that. It was like about this like game and we were all playing. There was like 10 of us or whatever. And yeah, I made like 25K in sales, like and in cash received, I think it was like 10K or whatever in 2.5 weeks. And I had up until then I'd made like a K a month. Like it was really like a shock. Like obviously I'd gotten coached a lot by people, I'd invested in myself, I'd done a lot of work, but it's still that was like a real like shift. And it's so true what you're saying, and it's so funny because it's so easy in business. I don't know if it's business or the world in general to just get a bit like serious and get a bit boggled down and a bit like caught up, but like, oh my God, like, cause it's, you can kind of put this like serious face on suddenly because you like have a goal and now you're like trying to get to it. And what you just brought up of like, what if today was a 10K day? And like, it's so funny, even when you were talking about that, like it brought so much like ease into my body. And I noticed myself being like, what would I do? And it was so much more fun and playful and spontaneous. And I remember I literally had the thought, ooh, I would send this email today. I would do this. I would do that. And it's like we all know this, and yet it's like we always need these reminders. So I just like love that you shared that. What I'm feeling called to ask is what else? If you felt like they're like when you think about your clients and you think about like their biggest like sticky points where when you've kind of unraveled that sticky point, it tends to create this huge either quantum leap or like a real sense of flow, or whether it's like 6 months later they're making money, like big money or whatever. Like, what do you find is another sticky point that you tend to like help your clients unravel that you notice like as a pattern with your clients?
Yeah. And I really love that game that you described. I've never heard of that. Like, yeah, I've never heard of go get like 90K worth of no's. I'm like, okay, so I'll pitch 3 30K packages. Why not? That could be fun, right? And yeah,
Seriously though. Yeah, it
yeah,
is
yeah,
fun. It's so much more like it's exciting and like it doesn't have to mean anything. I think that's the thing. It like everything feels like it has to mean something. And it's like actually this is just about service and fun and impact. Anyway, keep going.
yeah. And actually on that note, like one of my favorite things to do with myself, when I have sold a big juicy package or enrolled someone, like yesterday, I sold a 30K package. Immediately after, and this was something I learned from one of my very first sales coaches, she was like, in that vibration, when you've just made that sale, go make another. Like, don't be like, oh yeah, I made the sale, I'm done. Like, go make another, go make two more. Cause you're in this place where you don't need the money, you don't need the sale, you just got 30K, like you're good, you're golden, you could stop. But why not keep going like that? And that was the zone I was so in when I was hitting like the 80 90 100Ks. I was just like, what else can I sell, what else can I sell, what else? Like it was just nonstop. And then I learned, which is the point I'll bring to your next question, was more of some of like the business pieces. So when I started to stretch my capacity in terms of income and clients, I had sold, in a sense, in a way I oversold. And that's okay because I did it for a very short period of time. And I think people are afraid of overselling because they'll burn out or something might happen. They'll have like a negative client experience or whatever. So I had oversold, but then that showed me what I needed to shift. It showed me where I needed better Voxer boundaries. It showed me where I needed like more hours. It showed me where my contracts were a little bit weak. It showed me who I wanted to bring on as a client and who made a good client inside of a Voxer space and all of that, what my pricing needed to be. Like, so another thing that I would coach people on is more that like the behind the scenes, the mechanics, like what needs to be in place and who's handling what. And 100% when you're growing your business and you start to make more and more money, there's going to be client dynamics. You're going to get someone in your mastermind who says they don't like the way you coach them. They don't like the way you did this. They think you should do that instead. They're not happy. Like this, you cannot run a business without that happening. It's going to happen. It's going to happen a few times over. And so that would be like the next level. Like after someone sort of broken through, they're really good with the mindset and limiting beliefs. They've shifted with that. They're in flow state. They're selling offers that they want. Then the next piece is like standards, boundaries, business mechanics, and making sure that they're set up because, and we haven't even talked about this, but what's so important for me as a business owner is that my business supports the life that I lead. Like that's number one for me is being there for my kids, being able to go snowboarding with them, being able to be present with them, being able to like be with my husband and, have that family time and have time to work out and do all the things that I actually love. So in order for those two things to come together, life and business, your business needs to have those standards and those boundaries. And to the coach that you were referring to, who was setting whatever we have to start doing. And that's uncomfortable for people because they don't want clients to think badly about them. They don't want clients to think they're out of integrity. They're afraid. When I've made changes to my containers, I anticipate that my longest standing clients, one of them's going to complain and they're going to say something negative about it. And can I hold that? Can I hold either that conversation or that email without flipping and getting triggered into my own scarcity, pattern? So that would be where I would go with that.
I am not kidding when I say like I could literally talk to you for ages because that like led me to like wanting to ask so many other questions, but I'll kind of end this there. But that is so powerful because it's so true. It's like all of the little icky, like sticky points that we experience or that were like our fears, but also like as we're going and we're noticing, oh my God, like I really like dropped down in my power just because like X happened. And it's like obviously having self-compassion and noticing like you're human and it's okay and that's just one of your wounds and it's, let's just like be kind. But at the same time, like that can really be, and I've experienced it myself, is like really where there's yeah, growth to be had. And then that's where you can have like a huge quantum leap. And it's so
Exactly.
funny because, and I know only people, and I feel like this is a lot of my audience, it's like only people who've been in business for like 5 years plus, if not 10 years or whatever, really, realize that when you think you're done, your evolution is like done and like you've hit all like the things, it's like a whole new array of like, yeah, like triggers or wounds or evolutions like pop up. And I love that. Like I personally think like, oh, it's so good you're never done.
Yeah.
I love that it's never complete. Like this is just like an ongoing, ever going like experience. And I say that to my husband a lot because he runs his own business and sometimes he's like, and I'm like, I always say to him, I'm like, you would be so bored in a job. Like, you love the idea. And obviously it depends what kind of job, but he needs a business because he's somebody who really works on like beautiful like challenge and problem solving and all of that. I'm like, this is good for you. Like, and he laughs because he knows that's true and stuff. So I just love it because I know everyone who's listening to this as well, you guys are amazing when it comes to this, and that's why you're entrepreneurs, is like you actually feed on this stuff and you love the growth, you love the challenge, and you love the evolution, and it's just like this ongoing process. Okay. I could talk to Becky like all day. But to Becky, tell people if somebody's like listens to this and is like, oh my gosh, like I'm obsessed with her, and because I know how, well, that's just how I am. It's either like, oh my God, I'm so into this, or I'm
Yeah.
like, a bit like, meh, whatever. But the person who's like, I'm so into this and I'm really keen and curious about her, where's like the first place that they should go after listening to this?
I mean, come into my DMs. Come say hi on
Yeah.
Instagram. Check me out on Instagram. Read some of my posts. If you like my vibe and my fire and this energy and you want to be coached in these conversations, like yes, come say hi in my DMs. We can have a quick back and forth chat. Um, I have a ton of different offers that are on Telegram. So they're audio only
Yeah.
offers, like from $100 to $500. I've got a signature program that's called the 7-figure offer suite, where we build out your 7-figure offer suite so you can make $1 million with your offers and from a place of like love and joy. So I can send you the link for that. And I also have a year-long mentorship and mastermind program for people who are really serious about doing this and you've got that fire and that go energy. And we do all the mentorship there, hot seat calls, as well as you get access to every single program that I have. So you could, binge all the things all year long and really create some quantum leaps. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. I love that the first thing that you said was just like, come in my DMs, because I feel like that is so you. And it's not because what I feel about you is just like there is such an openness. And I think that's probably why you receive clients so effortlessly, is like there is this sort of like, let's just chat. Like, let's not make a big deal. Like, just come and chat and like we can just talk and then that's it. And I guess I just like love, I think that's so you. I'm really not surprised you just said that, but I just wanted to reflect that back to you because not everyone says that, but it was
Yeah.
very telling about what kind of person you are and what kind of like coach you are. Because I think you're just like, you care about the person and you just are like, yeah, come, let's chat. And if it's aligned, perfect. And if it's not aligned, perfect as well. And then there's all this array of offers that you can jump into. So I just love that.
Well, thank you. And when I used to do sales calls, my thing was like, I am not attached to what you decide. I'm going to present to you my offers. I'm going to share my offers with you. I'm not going to take your credit card. I'm not going to pressure you. I don't care if you need to think about it. I don't care if you need to go talk to your husband. Like, that's all totally fine. I want you to know, it's like, I want you to know what's in my store and how you can work with me. And then you get to decide whether you want to come in. So when I chat with someone back and forth in the DMs, it's like, hey, what's your vision? What are you bumping up against? And if I can help you, amazing. I have referred people to other coaches. I've said, I don't think you're a fit. Like, it's never and not that there's even anything wrong with sales pitches, but it's never a sales pitch. It's an invitation and then you get to decide.
No, but what you're, by the way, that in itself was gold, and like that could be worth a few thousand, like if not 10K, because it's like what you just said of like the non-attachment in and of itself, and just like here are your offers, and you said I'm not attached to what you decide, and like how powerful is that? Like if even the person who's listening to this later like is thinking, oh my, I'm just going to take that on. Like, I'm just going to try that on more and more as a belief, like whether someone's coming to me or not, even when you're creating content, when you're writing an email, it's like,
Yes.
it's like almost like I can tell this about you, but it's like you love your work, you love your clients, you love the world and life, and you get to play in this game. And so if they want to come play the game with you, amazing, but also you love it regardless. So whether they come, they'll be like
Exactly.
cherry on top, but you don't need them. And I think
Yeah.
it's the whole thing of like Steve Chandler says, like needy is creepy. It's like
Mm.
you're the opposite, right? It's just like that kind of non-attachment. And I just, I mean, like I said, I can't, I'll shut up. But this is so good. This was so juicy. Guys, what I'll do is I'll put in the show notes, I will put Becky's like details, her Instagram, her website, so you can go check her out or send her a DM. This has been such a pleasure, Becky. Thank you so much for taking an hour of your time for this. And I'm sure I'll see you again. I'll force you to something else soon. But have an amazing rest of your day. If you guys are listening to this, make sure that you share anything that you had as a breakaway, like a breakthrough or some sort of takeaway. And we'll see you for the next episode. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.